Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Genevieve. Thanks to the Middle East Institute. Good colleagues at the Institute have once again done it and held this wonderful event. As the Iranian guy on the panel, I'm going to focus on Iran. I hope you don't mind on this day of the 31st anniversary of the hostage situation in Tehran. I'm going to stay away from U.S.-Iran relations. I'm going to stick with what I was asked to do, which is to look at Iran's regional affairs. And when I saw the title of the panel here saying shifting regional dynamics, I said to myself, well, everybody knows what sort of shifts have taken place in the Middle East in recent years. What can I bring to the table in 15 minutes that might be worth something? And frankly, right away, the issue that came to mind was to highlight the debate inside Iran about the country's regional policies, its successes and failures. So that's really what I'm going to try and do in the next 10, 15 minutes to talk about that debate, because that might surprise you. The extent of that debate inside Iran about where the country's going in terms of its regional policy might come as a surprise to those of you who look at Iran as a dictatorship or a semi-dictatorship. But before I get to that, let me just say a few words about what I heard again and again yesterday, and I think to some extent is true, this notion of the rising Iran. I don't think anybody would dispute the fact that Iran's regional power has increased substantially over the last 10 years, obviously, particularly following the downfall of the regime of Saddam Hussein. There's no doubt about it. But I think we have to be careful and qualified. It's easy for us to sort of make the assumption that here is Iran unstoppable, on march across different arenas in the Middle East, and there's nothing that can be done about it. If you look at those arenas in the Middle East where Iran is strongest, for instance, in Iraq or Lebanon or among Palestinians for that matter, it seems to me that Iran has the kind of leverage that it has because of something that it didn't do. In the case of Iraq, it was direct U.S. action that resulted in Iran having the kind of clout that it has today. In the case of Iranian influence with Hamas in Gaza or with the Hezbollah in Lebanon, it's as a result of what we heard again and again yesterday from the distinguished visitors from the Middle East about the lack of progress in the Arab-Israeli peace talks. And Omar just mentioned this before in relations to Turkey, that the Turks are now trying to fill the vacuum when there is a vacuum. Omar mentioned specifically Egypt. But I mean, it seems to me that Iran has been playing the same role, filling vacuums in the cases of Lebanese Shias and some of the rejectionist Sunni elements in the Palestinian territories. But that is a reality of geopolitics in the Middle East. Iran playing that sort of a role, going in and helping entities that are looking for sponsors. That's not to say that Iran has many options in terms of going around and spreading its patronage. I don't really see a lot of takers out there, and I think that's what has to get us to think about that, qualifying the notion. When we say Iran on the rise, are we talking about Iran on the rise across the board? Are we talking specific places where there are people who are desperate for sponsorship and Iran has been able to play that role? Put it to you in another way. The attractiveness of the Islamic Republic as a model. Again, when I look at the debate in Iraq today, some 6 years after the downfall of the Ba'athist regime, I don't see a lot of loud voices in that country arguing for the concept of the Velayat al-Faqih, the supreme jurisprudent. I don't see that. I don't see that model being sort of advocated that strongly in places like Lebanon either. What I see is those takers, as I said, those entities in the Middle East that are in need of sponsorship looking to Iran for financial, other tangible support, and that by far outweighs the sort of attractiveness of the Iranian ideology, if there is one. Again, just from my point of view, I think it's premature to say, Ahmadinejad, Khamenei, and we've seen some headlines to that regard in recent years, that they have won the future of the Middle East, that the future of the Middle East will look like it does in Iran today. I think that is premature, and we need to qualify that. With that said, let me switch over to the internal debate in Iran about the country's regional policy. Before I say anything on this, let me just point out that, again, there is a very lively debate in Iran about all things relating to the policymaking process, including foreign and regional policies. There are taboos or semi-taboos, and the two ones that come to mind are US-Iran relations, which is really a red line. And so is the nuclear program. That's another red line. Those two issues are kind of taboo. You don't touch them because the Supreme Leader's office and his people are the ones who are basically in charge. And any kind of debate is seen to be undermining the official position. Hence, you don't have the kind of debate. When it comes to regional policy of Iran, you have a very lively debate. And I just reminded myself when I was going through literature, preparing for today, about this sort of common consensus that seems to be there. And again, it might surprise you, but overall, when you look at the literature that exists, look away from regime apologists who will defend anything the authorities at Tehran do, the consensus as Iran's standing in the region is weak. And they say this publicly, and you can go to various sources that debate and research these issues, and that seems to be the consensus. And let me tell you why they keep saying it's weak. There are two things that come to mind all the time when they talk about Iran's weakness on regional policy. One is that its basic assessment of regional dynamics are wrong. The other thing is Iran's policy performance is contradictory. What do they mean by that? The primary issue that seems to come mind is that the Iranian authorities continue, I mean, this is a regime that's been in place for 31 years now, continue to have this hope, although they don't publicly state it, but this is something that most people will agree seems to be the hope in the top echelons of power in Iran, that the regimes around them in the Arab world will fall apart, that the House of Saud will fall apart tomorrow, that the small GCC states will sort of disappear and new entities will emerge. This seems to be this wrong assessment that critics of the regime keep referring to. And the other one is this notion of pursuing a contradictory policy. So on the one hand, to give you the big picture, you got slogans that we hear on a daily basis come out from various agencies in Iran, talking about a Middle East without extraterritorial powers being involved. I mean, that is a clear reference to the United States and the West in general. So they want, and they're open about it, they want the United States to pull out. They want the Fifth Navy to pull out, and they want to be able to go ahead and rearrange the security framework of that region. It's contradictory because they clearly are misunderstanding the point or trying to ignore the reality that most of those Arab states to the south of the Persian Gulf look at their security totally tied to the presence of the United States. And this is what Iranian critics keep highlighting. It cannot be done that way. You cannot tell the states on the other side of the Gulf or in Egypt and so forth that you are looking for partnership with them, while you at the same time undermine them by asking them to sort of disassociate themselves with something, i.e. U.S. presence, that in their views guarantees their security.